Let's get more now on the war in Ukraine, where the President Volodymyr Zelensky is again calling on the international community to urgently provide more air defences. Mick Ryan is a retired Army general and non-resident fellow of the Lowy Institute and Washington-based Centre for Strategic and International Studies. He joins us now. Mick Ryan, thank you. Let's go first to where the war is at on the ground. Ukrainian forces have had to withdraw from positions in the eastern Donetsk region. How significant is this development?
Well, good morning. These developments in the east over the last 72 hours will be causing the Ukrainian High Command quite some concern. The Russians have broken through Ukrainian defensive positions. They've been able to advance several kilometres, take several settlements. This is probably the biggest Russian advance since they took Avdiivka, and they have a lot of forces in reserve that they can push through, as opposed to the Ukrainians, who are short on people and firepower.
Now, that capture of Avdiivka, as you just mentioned, was in February. Could the Russians capture Chasiv Yar before the US weapons arrive? And what about Kyiv?
Well, certainly Chasiv Yar is their objective at the moment. They're very keen to envelop it. They're moving to the north and south of that city in eastern Ukraine. They, by some reports, want to get it by the 9th of May, but I think we can exercise some scepticism about the Russians wanting to do that or even being able to do that. But it would be a very significant moment at this point in the war, and the Russians are trying to exploit the gap between the announcement of more US aid and the arrival of it over the next few weeks.
So, just to be clear, when are we looking at for those weapons to arrive, and what will they mean on the ground?
Well, the Americans will have had some already pre-located in places like Germany and Poland, ready to go as soon as the US president signed the paperwork. But there's only so much you can move at a certain pace, and it will take time, days or potentially even weeks, to restock rather depleted artillery and air defence munitions in Ukraine. And this is the gap that the Russians will be seeking to exploit.
As for Australia's package announced by our Defence Minister, $100 million, what does that do practically, but also in terms of morale?
Well, every bit of assistance by every country is both appreciated by Ukraine and is important. But Australia's contribution won't have any significant impact on the battlefield in the near term. There's some drones and drone defences. At the end of the day, it will help. But Australia's assistance is pretty sporadic and appears to be a bit of a 51% solution, just enough to stop critics, but not enough to really make a difference in line with Australia's 13th largest GDP in the world.
Mick, you've said that few Western leaders have consistently been able to speak with their populations about building a convincing case for ongoing aid for Ukraine. And their defence, I should say. Is Australia doing this? And more importantly, is Joe Biden doing this?
Well, I think Joe Biden is doing more of it now. They were pretty short on doing that the first year of the war, but I think he's understood the requirement to speak to his people and explain the purpose of supporting Ukraine. We're not really seeing this in the Australian debate. Ukraine wasn't even mentioned in the Defence Strategic Review. Russia apparently is a problem only for the Europeans. The reality is Russia is also a Pacific power with a larger Pacific fleet than the Royal Australian Navy.